And a lot of people say, you got a feeder, or, may bah humbug that. But what it has done is people now are able to inventory their deer better.
Correct.
And it allows people where back in the day, if you saw a good rack, out 150 yards, you might go, I better shoot that, because you didn't really know what deer it was. Well, now when people can put up a feeder, feed the deer, whether it's corn or some kind of supplement or something, and they get the picture of that 130 that's a good young up-and-comer, but then they've got this picture of a mature buck that's coming to the same feeder that's that 150, they're not going to shoot that 130 because they know that 150 has a chance to come to that spot to give them a high percentage shot with a bow.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 269. Major League Bowhunter, Brandon Adams and Matt Duff, the Mississippi deer season and the Oklahoma Slam. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from Rackology, everything you need in one bag. Now available at Rural King and Orslin Farm and Home storefronts, or online at www.rackology.org. Quiet Cat, the all-terrain electric bicycle. Visit quietcat.com, that's QUIETKAT.com, and use the discount code BIGBUCK15 to secure 15% off your next Quiet Cat purchase. Covert scouting cameras, remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security, and Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, and hoodies. And show support for this podcast by visiting www.bigbuckregistry.com/MERCH. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
This is Cameron Coble, the average Joe blue-collar bow hunter, and you're listening to my number one favorite podcast of all time, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Dr. Dave Samuel, and you're about to push play on one of the most informative Big Buck podcasts out there, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, this is Dr. Ken Nordberg. You're listening to my favorite podcast on the internet, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to this week's show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we have an ample supply of harnesses to give away from our volunteer donors. If you're in need of a full-body harness, please send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com. It's been 4 years since we last visited with our friends at Major League Bowhunter. Every conversation we've had with their crew has led to some deep thinking related to hunting, industry challenges, and solutions to keep hunting alive for generations to come. According to Matt, due to some of the legislation and some of the economic factors relative to agriculture in Mississippi, the Mississippi deer hunting has never been so good. We reflect on Matt's 2018-2019 deer season, and we turn to Brandon Adams, a longtime MLB crew member, and learn how he prepared for a season he called the Oklahoma Slam, which involved taking one of each of the 5 big game species in Oklahoma in a single hunting season, using over-the-counter tags available to anyone. We'll get to our entire interview with Matt Duff and Brandon Adams in just one moment, but before we do, let's hear from our friends at Rackology and Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Hey, it's Eric Fitzgerald here with Rackology. Wanted to visit you briefly about one of the most exciting products that we got in the market with Rackology. This is our food plot fertilizer. You can supplement your deer right through your food plot with this product. This is not your normal NPK. This has got so many goodies in this bag. Basically what it does is it makes your soil work for you so you can get by with just using fertilizer like this and not a lot of synthetics. If you want a good food plot and you want deer coming in and healthy plants, look at the food plot fertilizer through Rackology. Check us out at rackology.org. Thanks for tuning in.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week. Tennessee teen bags 27-point monster buck following crazy hunt. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Madeline Farber. A Tennessee teen who had initially planned to hunt squirrels ended up with a monster 27-point buck instead. Bo Ezel, 13 of Benton County, bagged the deer in late December after a friend called him about a buck behind her home. The teen, who was slow to make his way to the friend's house because he didn't expect to catch the massive creature, was informed after his arrival that the buck had made its way to a nearby creek, the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency said in a statement on Facebook. At first, Ezel was unable to see the buck, but he finally noticed it, telling the Wildlife Agency it looked like a big bush on his head. The buck then apparently looked directly at the teen. Ezel told the Wildlife Agency the hunt was crazy. In total, the buck had 27 scoreable points. Hunter caught after illegally killing deer blames wife. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Bradford Betts. A Michigan hunter who was caught with an illegally taken deer told a conservation officer his wife would get mad at him if he didn't come home with deer meat, the Cadillac Evening News reported. The conservation officer, Josiah Killingbeck, told the paper that he approached a suspect after receiving a tip about a hunter who allegedly shot a deer near Baldwin despite county restrictions that protect the animal. The suspect denied having killed a deer, but Killingbeck said he could see unused deer tags in the suspect's wallet and blood and drag marks leading away from a bait pile, the report said. When told a witness had seen him shoot the deer, the suspect hung his head and admitted to shooting a spike horn, knowing it was illegal and not tagging it, Killingbeck said. The honest-to-God truth is that my wife wants deer meat, and if I come home without any, she'll get really mad at me, the hunter allegedly told the conservation officer. Killingbeck followed the suspect back to the cabin where he found the deer hidden behind a house. The Michigan Department of Natural Resources then seized the animal and said enforcement action was taken, according to the report. Bedford County man considered oldest deer hunter in the country. This story is from the ABC 13 WSET website and was reported by Karen Pinto. It's deer hunting season for a man in Bedford County, Virginia. It will be his 40th year killing deer. 105-year-old Clyde Roberts is widely considered the oldest hunter in America. During hunting season, most afternoons you can find him in his tree stand watching for deer. Since turning 100 5 years ago, he's killed 13 deer and he's added 2 bucks just this season. When Clyde retired at 65, his son, Mike Roberts, taught him how to hunt, and now he is invited to hunt across the state and has garnered national attention. When he retired, I got him into deer hunting, and he's been doing it now for 40 years, explained Roberts. It's a father-son bonding time for the two of them. Clyde still has his eyesight, a sharp shot, and, of course, his sense of humor. It's just a pleasure for all things he gave me in my life to give him something back at 105 years of age, said Mike. At 105, hunting enthusiasts widely believe he's the oldest deer hunter in North America. His secret? Hard-working and living for the Lord. And he said he attributes hunting season to keeping him youthful as well. Hunting season has ended, and Roberts said he is already excited for next hunting season. Disabled 8-year-old hunter asked thieves to return stolen equipment. I want my stuff back. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Michael Barterimo. A disabled 8-year-old boy in Forest City, Arkansas, is asking the thieves who stole his custom hunting gear to bring it back. Jace Collum, who was partially paralyzed in a 2015 car accident, returned home from a stay in the hospital on Friday only to learn that his specially made hunting stand was robbed, WREG reported. Jace's grandfather, Glenn Shepard, told the outlet he built the stand for his grandson to give Jace the same opportunities as other children. According to Shepard, the thieves pried the door open and ransacked the hunting stand, making off with a custom stand that was bolted to the floor, and now Jace isn't sure he'll have all the equipment he needs for an upcoming hunt. They stole the dead shot and all the things I had to help me hunt, he told WREG. Jace's family has contacted the Arkansas Fish and Game Commission, and they say no matter what, Jace isn't going to miss out on his hunt. You can't hold him back, and we wouldn't hold him back, because we want him to have the same opportunity that every kid has, Shepard says. Commenters on Facebook, too, have offered to help Jace replace his equipment. A representative for the Arkansas Fish and Game Commission confirmed to Fox News that the department is assisting with the St. Francis County Sheriff's Department in its investigation. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. Special thanks to Major League Bowhunting's Matt Duff for our new Deer News intro, as well as Daniel Applebaum and John Geis for leads on stories this week. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Brandon Adams and Matt Duff from Major League Bowhunter.
Matt Duff, Brandon Adams, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. What's happening, guys?
Oh, not a whole lot. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank y'all.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has.
Brandon, it's your first time.
This is my first time. Absolutely.
But Brandon has been with us since day one of Major League Bowhunter. So he's been our producer, and we do everything in-house, and he does it all.
He is the glue.
Yes, he is. And he's also COO of the company as well. So he's
Pretty
kind of
good
my
title
boss.
for
He's
glue.
kind of my boss now.
I do a lot of
actually.
things behind the scenes. That's right. Yeah.
Nice. But he also hunts. He's a personality on the show.
Right.
So we'll get into that later on, I'm
cool.
sure.
So the last time we were on was about 4 years ago, episode 83, season 4. We're now on season 7, episode 268.
Wow. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
awesome,
Thank
man.
you. But I feel older somehow.
I do too. I have my reading glasses on now. Dusty's giving me a hard time about, but
Yeah, that first year I've really seen you committed to them.
well,
Like they was hidden before, now they're just like exposed, hanging out on your jacket type
right.
glasses.
I mean, I don't,
Right.
you get
That's
older.
okay. No, I'm not. I'm not one bit beating you up over it, but I'm just brought that to your attention that you're old.
Yeah. Hey, who knows? Next year I'll have just all elastic pants.
Oh, it could be.
Yeah, no belt.
It could happen.
It's all about comfort these days.
Yeah, ain't about how
When
you
did
look.
you realize
Matt,
that
where you going in
needed
that dress?
glasses? When was that first time?
About 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
When Brandon told me all my footage when I did film was out of focus.
Yep. That
It
is
looked,
accurate.
It looked focused to me.
Right.
But, losing my eyesight a little bit, little by little.
But it happens. 90% of us, I
Right.
guess.
As one of the resident old guys on this show, I noticed that when I go to read a restaurant menu at night, I
Right.
can't see the print.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, so I
And
gotta
now I can't see
do
my
this.
phone close to me
Right.
at all
Yeah,
unless I have glasses on.
Exactly.
Brandon is a LASIK surgery recipient.
Yes, I fixed my vision artificially, but I can still see. Even when I couldn't see, I could see close up. I was nearsighted, but I couldn't. I mean, I was blind
He had
it
Coke,
when it
he had
came
the
to
Coke bottle bottoms.
Yeah, it was bad.
Same here.
LASIK was the best thing I ever did. Period.
Yep.
It was I wish I'd have done it as soon as I was eligible.
Right.
Age wise or whatever.
Yeah.
As soon as I was eligible, I wish I'd have done it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's affecting me though in the field, deer hunting seriously, especially when we went out west elk hunting. It's difficult to focus binoculars, and looking through a spotting scope, it puts more strain on your eyes, and I've been having a really tough time with it. And that's kind of what the readers are. So I'm getting used to looking through binos with glasses on, which is a lot tougher and frustrating, to not be able to pick out stuff that I used to be able to. And I'm constantly changing the focus ring, and partly because the eyes are different. The right eye's gone worse than the left. So I've thought about doing that or going the contact route, or like you guys, just go ahead and getting some glasses, commit to it.
Yeah, I'm nearsighted, so long distance is a little blurry for me, and deer hunting in particular. That now is, and I'm not quite the age of you gentlemen,
You're not?
but I'm starting to notice it in the woods that I look out trying to focus on something at a long distance. I'm saying 400 to 700 yards out, and it just ain't there no more.
Yeah.
You can see physically something is there, but you couldn't tell yourself what it was if you had to.
Well, I've changed. I mean, this is, in all seriousness, the last couple of years. We were talking about this morning. I had 1 year that was really rough. I went through target panic.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah, that was on the last
We
show.
talked about that. Yeah.
And so the last couple of years, I've been real confident with the new Matthews bow we had, but I switched to this HHA sight that has a big dovetail on it, so it goes way out further than the riser. And when it's close, and I try to focus on, say, a 20-yard object, if I can't hardly focus on the pin, and the object, and the object is really blurry, and I wasn't really noticing that, but I think that had something to do with, I had some target panic for sure, but if I was able to focus on the pin, my subject was blurry, and by switching to that dovetail sight, that King Optimizer that gets it out, another 5 or 6 inches, it allows me to be better focused on the deer and my sight. And I never really understood why that, have that sight out. It's a little bit more accurate too, but it's also helped with my vision.
Well, being able to see your pin better, target panic's all about being afraid to miss. And if you can't see your pin, you're afraid to miss. Right, because you're working to see your pin and getting it out there further where you can actually focus in on it a little better.
It helps.
That's what helps, and the results definitely, definitely show that.
Yep, and I've been more confident with it. I didn't notice that. I don't think, like you're saying. I would get focused on the deer, and my sight wasn't as finite, clear, and just by moving at that distance, because I've got the readers. I can see when I go from a foot to 13 inches, that's the difference, right? It comes into focus, and that sight, moving that out, just that 5 or 6 inches made a big difference to me.
Right. Nice. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's amazing. So let's touch base a little bit, Matt, about what's going on in Mississippi for the 2018-19 season. I'm telling you, I'm a little disgusted in a sense.
You are.
But I'm really proud of you.
You're disgusted.
Yeah, because I get these texts. Hey, man, I smacked another giant in Mississippi. I'm in a mecca deer state of Ohio, and I can't even get one on the ground.
Hey,
But I'm proud of you. That's real. Congratulations.
I appreciate that. It's been very rewarding to be able to develop the family farm that I grew up on. We farmed for many years, and then putting it into the CRP and WRP program, really helped with the grass, being able to hold deer. We're not but about a mile from the Mississippi River levee, so you've got just miles and miles of big river, heavy timber bottoms, and there's always been a lot of deer over there. And in recent years, with the Mississippi River flooding, a lot of the deer have come over, and because we've had the food and the cover on the farm now, we're holding a lot more deer. And it's Brandon was down there, this year with me, and we got a nice buck, but I grew up there, and every year I learned something new about how to hunt the deer, what they're really doing, where they're living, what they're trying to do at different parts of the year. And so each year I've kind of tweaked the setups, whether it's, lock-on stands or ground blinds. And we've really gone to the ground blinds this year, or the last couple of years, because my little nephew, who's 11 now, got really interested in bow hunting when he was 8. And we got him that Stoke that Matthews makes, which is a really fast youth bow that gives him a legitimate chance, at 20 yards. And so once he took a liking to archery hunting, we started setting up all these ground blinds because we didn't want him climbing.
Gotcha.
And we've actually found that the ground blinds are super effective, being able to get close to these deer. And over the last few years, we've learned where to put them in pinch points, and we were able to feed in Mississippi, so we have feeders in different spots, and then just letting these deer grow, keeping them on the property, and then being able to see them during hunting season, which I know you have challenge with in Ohio.
Yep.
And, it's been cool to kill back-to-back, bucks that were 170 or better.
We talked a little bit about that. Very fortunate to be able to text back and forth and keep in touch with you guys. But we texted a little bit about the able to feed the deer. How long has that been in place in Mississippi?
The feeding program has been in for probably 7-8 years, but they just recently have changed the distance. When they first started, you could feed. It had to be a specific ration of pelletized. You could only feed so much corn or whatever.
So it was highly regulated.
It was very regulated. And then you had to be at least 150 yards from a feeder, and it had to be out of your line of sight.
No kidding.
Okay, so that was mainly for the rifle hunters, obviously. Well, then this past season, or the year before, they went to, now you only have to, the feeder can be 100 yards in line of sight. So it basically gave guys an opportunity to hunt with a rifle, over a feeder. Well, for a bow guy, it didn't do much. But then this year they changed that, so now there's no distance, and you can be in line of sight for a bow. And a lot of people say, you got a feeder, or, may bah humbug that. But what it has done is people now are able to inventory their deer better.
Correct.
And it allows people where back in the day, if you saw a good rack, out 150 yards, you might go, I better shoot that, because you didn't really know what deer it was. Where now when people can put up a feeder, feed the deer, whether it's corn or some kind of supplement or something, and they get the picture of that 130 that's a good young up-and-comer, but then they've got this picture of a mature buck that's coming to the same feeder that's that 150, they're not going to shoot that 130 because they know that 150 has a chance to come to that spot to give them a high percentage shot with a bow. And so people are letting deer grow in Mississippi now, where they're not shooting that pretty good buck that they don't really know what it is. It's changing. I mean, we're shooting big deer all over the state now.
That's
and I think that's
point.
a main reason.
That's a great point. You just it gets kind of a bad rap when you talk about feeding. But to inventory the deer will freeze the hunters that care about that stuff from killing just any old deer.
That's right.
And
that's absolutely right.
Not only that, though, just think of if you continue to feed through Mississippi don't get super cold, but it gets, chilly weather down there, and your does are getting bred, and your does are healthier because they're getting that nutrition that makes that body thrive. That's got to all lead to healthier herds, healthier fawns.
Absolutely.
Just a whole healthier deer population.
Right.
And it's got to make that antler growth and the genetics produce a little stronger than they normally would. And I think it's often overlooked that, feeding or baiting deer is, if you continue it through the colder months, it's going to benefit you in the long run. You can't go in and feed deer for 2 months, get them on a regular pattern, get their stomach used to eating at high nutrition feed or whatever you're putting out, and then just cut them off. That's the worst thing you can do.
Right.
But, I'm sure you're seeing results after a few years of being able to feed, 7-8 years, like you said, and then now it's where you can actually inventory your deer. Technology is way better as far as cameras and all the options of shooting that smaller racked antler deer are going to the wayside, and people are focusing on killing a big mature deer that actually needs to leave the farm before it either dies or it beats up your deer and they leave your farm. There's all kinds of positives to feeding.
Right. And the experience for, me growing up, I mean, to be close to be within 20, 30 yards of several deer for a pretty decent amount of time was unheard of, when I was growing up. And so I'm able to take Brady, my nephew, who's 8 years old, and be able to have him in a ground blind and be face to face on the ground with these deer that are 20, 30 yards from him. And that experience is fun.
It's epic.
And then for them to have an opportunity to maybe be able to shoot one with a bow is really having that feeder setup is about the only way you'd have that scenario. Right. If I was to, put him in a lock-on or a ladder just in the timber somewhere and hoping the chances of catching a mature buck on a trail where we could stop him within a high percentage shot where he's, it takes a lot for him to get drawn in that ground blind because he's pulling his all the weight he can, and, minimize the movement and everything has allowed him. He took his first buck when he was, 9 years old. He missed one when he was 8. Brandon was down at the farm, and he is eat up with bow hunting now. And because of that feeder scenario in Mississippi, not only is he eat up with it, his 6-year-old sister killed her first deer with a crossbow this year and a hog. And now that family farm has become the destination for them when deer season's in, instead of going and doing other things. And now we've just created 2 more passionate hunters through that scenario, where maybe if we were going and sitting for hours like I grew up doing, and not seeing a whole lot, with kids having a lot more options to fill their time now to entertain them, hunting may not have been that much fun. Yep. But now him and all his little buddies, they're eat up with it. We bring them to the farm, they're sitting and they, you're going to see some deer and they're going to be close and they get to, interact. I mean, the stuff that Brady's learned from 8 years old to now 11, I mean, he's learned, he knows more than I knew coming out of high school about bow hunting. He truly understands, hey, we can't go to the pipe ground blind today because there's a south wind. He's like, We can go here, here, here. He understands why, because he's seen deer get downwind and blow and interact with them. And there are a lot of people in Mississippi that when legislation first was enacted, they're like, they're going to just ruin it. It's going to kill every deer and all that, when actually it's made people be more selective, because now they know they have that opportunity and go, hey, there is a big 5 or 6 year old buck. I'd rather shoot him than this young deer, and I'm going to let him go. And it's basically educating our hunters that never had that. Him growing up in Oklahoma, he's had that asset,
Right.
Well, what you're talking about, you said educating. That's the exact right word. People nowadays are more educated on what a mature deer is, because like where I'm from, I grew up probably the same way you did. If it was brown, it was down.
Right.
And if I seen a 130-inch rack, which I wouldn't know it was 130, but I seen a 130-inch rack on a 2-year-old, that'd have been the biggest deer in the world to me.
Right.
But nowadays, people are aware that deer is young, and that's because of their exposure on social media, on TV, on magazines, to what mature deer look like.
Well, and another thing with the youth that, we got to educate them that the conservation is a huge part of what we got going as far as a hunter. And I think, that getting them involved and having opportunity with close deer, they're seeing how the deer are, how they react to different things. It's educating the youth. It's making them a better hunter. And everybody says, what happens if a youth shoots a giant? Where do you go from there? Well, you got to educate along with that hunt, not just say, hey, we're shooting giant monster deer. Right. We're able to shoot these quality deer because of the conservation efforts that we're putting forth to get them to this point.
Right. Yeah.
And make them understand that. Everybody say, the youth are shooting a monster deer. Well, that's okay if they're shooting monster deer, but along with the shooting the good bucks, you got to be able to educate them along the way to that process. And I think as long as that somebody, us as a mature hunter is putting forth that effort to educate them to how this deer got that big, is that they'll carry that on and understand it versus if a small one comes out, I don't want to shoot that, it's not big enough. They're not looking at it like that.
That's right.
We're taking the time, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand, is that if a youth kills a big buck, the youth understands how it got to be that big buck. That's something that we all should push forward as hunters, conservationists, and put our efforts into making sure that they know why we are passing these young bucks and why it's okay to shoot a young buck. But if you let a young buck walk, it turns into a really great buck.
Right. Absolutely.
We're putting that effort forward, and I think that people don't realize that.
Matt, how long was the progression from the legislator to move the bait piles closer and closer and closer?
It started, I guess, about 8 years ago, about the time when I really started paying attention to the farm in Mississippi and going, okay, now that we can feed, what we need is supplemental feed. In Mississippi, we have a lot. I'm in the Mississippi Delta, a mile from the Mississippi River, and we have, a lot of crops and, agriculture there. But as a whole, along the Mississippi River, in the state, we have low nutrition browse.
Okay.
The timber, their acorns, their honeysuckle patches or whatever, it's low nutrition. So unless that deer is just growing up, in a bean field, or there's not a lot, there's hardly any alfalfa. But one big, huge shift that has happened in this progression of being able to feed was the cotton market tanked. So and in my area, cotton was a huge crop. In fact, that was the majority crop. Yep. It was cotton, and then whatever their off-season crop was, it was soybeans and cotton. And then when the market dropped out of cotton for the farmers, it got too expensive. Grain prices went through the roof. So all the cotton ground turned into corn ground. And so now it's corn and soybeans in Mississippi instead of cotton and soybeans. Okay. And that corn has what, like Dusty was alluding to, it's made for an overall healthier herd like the Midwest. And even though we don't produce the yields, say they do in Iowa or Nebraska, we still have, high nutrition crops now. And I think with that factor plus the feeding, I knew that we needed a supplemental feed. And that made a big difference, getting some mineral in there, even some of the supplemental feed that's real high in protein, because quite frankly, if you're in Iowa, a farmer that puts in a crop in Iowa is going to produce a way higher corn yield or soybean yield than we can in Mississippi on our ground. They just have better nutrients in the soil, so the deer grows up on better groceries in the Midwest. And now with all this corn going into Mississippi, and then farmers, my little brother's in the agriculture business, in the fertilizer business, and he's been marketing director for Monsanto. He's been in a bunch of different things in the ag industry, and we farmed. And what's happened in the agriculture is farmers are select targeting their fields with fertilizers now, where they used to just take a soil sample in a field in one spot and go, all right, this field needs this amount of fertilizer or this or that. And now farmers grid out a field, and they're supplementing fertilizer into those fields in Mississippi now that rival what they have in Nebraska and Iowa. Right. So that's the farming practice has changed as the advent of the feeders as well. And so now that soybean field behind my house that the farmer's farming is producing higher yield soybeans now because the farming technology has progressed. So it's a more potent soybean in my backyard now than used to be 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
So now, average body weights on our bucks are 250 pounds.
That's a big buck.
And that's as good as, can be as anywhere in the Midwest.
Definitely.
It's big. The buck I killed in Mississippi this year, it was about a 265-pound live weight deer and outweighed the deer I shot in Kansas by 30 pounds.
Right.
So those things have changed. But the legislation part of it, to get back to your question, was, a lot of the legislation in Mississippi is coming from the southern part of the state. The capital's in Jackson. So we have a limited amount of legislators that come from what I'd call the big buck country, the northwestern delta area, the big, Mississippi River bottoms. So the hill country is eat up with deer numbers. And so really the advent of the feeder was because of that. Is people are like, we got too many deer in Mississippi. We need to set up feeders so people can kill more deer. Mm-hmm. And what's happened is people are letting deer get bigger. And, they're still, the regulations have changed where we have a really long liberal rifle season. You can kill 3 bucks on a license, which I think is too much. But the feeder actually has helped produce these mature bucks now, where people are letting them go and not shooting just that pretty good rack that they get a glimpse of once a year.
Right. Because they're seeing more deer.
Right. They're seeing more deer.
You get to understand what's there.
Yeah.
Do you think that your nephew would have, because your nephew was exposed to more deer during the situation, what would he be doing if that wasn't the case?
He'd be more into sports. In fact, he was playing competitive baseball when he was a 6-year-old and 7-year-old. And he had gone hunting and shot a couple of nice bucks on the farm with a rifle. But he kind of had been there, done that, sitting in a box stand, shooting the deer, walked out in the green field, the last hour of light. And it wasn't until a couple of his buddies had bows and they were just shooting in the yard. And it was just something fun to do, shooting at targets. Mm-hmm. And then, I set up a ground blind close to one of my lock-ons, and he went out there and shot at a hog, missed it with my little brother, and he like eat up to go back to get that hog, and he ended up, shooting one, and then he got his first buck year before last, a big 6-point. It was a cull, it was a good deer to take, but the sense of accomplishment he got from that, even as he was, I guess, 9.5 at the time, just you could see kind of the progression that he didn't want to take a rifle. He wanted to get that deer with a bow, and now that's made him a more passionate hunter, and now that's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to play fall baseball. He still is into sports, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to deer season, now he wants, hey, Dad, can we go to the farm? And even my brother and his wife were on a meeting, and he said, hey, can I go hunt with Uncle Duff this weekend? And we sat and hunted, 3 days and had a blast. He shot a nice buck. We didn't recover it this year. He hit it bad. He hit it in the shoulder, and he learned from that. You got to put it behind the shoulder, and it was a great learning experience, and just the maturity level that he's gained from being in the woods is really cool. In fact, Chipper was down when we had our big group hunt. He's like, it's like Brady's like one of us. He's like a little hunter, like a mature kid, and the responsibility of, being able to take that bow and arrow out and have a lethal weapon in your hands. I mean, makes him more of a mature 10-year-old than the next kid who's just, riding his bike in the neighborhood playing basketball. I mean, he just doesn't understand the gravity of that whole situation. I think it's just matured him, and I think if there wasn't hunting, he'd be doing whatever other kids his age are doing, and we take that for granted.
Fortnite.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be playing video games, and even he brought his new PlayStation he got for Christmas the next weekend that I had him, and he wanted to play we played NFL Madden or whatever at night, and still be a kid,
right.
But he loves that hunting. And my dad was saying had him in the blind, and he's trying to get him to shoot a deer with a bow, which he's never done, and he was doing his opener, and we were talking about Brady hunting, and he said, what every hunter that buys a hunting license, an adult, should be required to do is take at least one kid that's never been hunting every year. If everybody did that, and so as a prime example, a friend of mine that I played baseball with the Pittsburgh Pirates, Matt Ryan is his name, and he lives in Memphis. He's a pharmaceutical salesman. He's got 2 kids. He's been busy. He never really hunted, but his kids, he wanted, are buddies with Brady, and they're like, hear Brady talking about killing a deer and hunting, so they come down to the farm with a rifle, and both boys shot their first doe. And Matt said that experience did more for my boys than anything they've done in their life. And I mean, it showed them this different side of life, so to speak, and he said it's helped him deal with his boys a little bit. They want to go hunting again now. And so now we've just created 2 more hunters by just taking them to the farm, letting them see deer, getting to shoot at one, the whole deal, and seeing Brady, their buddy, who's their age, excited about it, makes it cool, and that's what we need more of.
They pass it on too. Like they thrive
all his
off
buddies
of each
want
other.
to bow hunt now.
Right.
They're like, Dad, can I get a bow?
Yeah.
Hey,
what's Uncle Duff doing this weekend? What they're asking him.
Oh, they saw him on the show, and they think he's the biggest deal, which I could imagine being 9 or 10 years old and sitting in your den and going, hey, look, there's my buddy from elementary school.
Right.
Yeah.
Duff. I hate to branch off and talk to Brandon, but we're hearing
got a lot.
There's rumor going around that via text, via conversation of me and you, that Brandon has developed the Oklahoma Slam.
Yeah, he's done something that's never been done before in the state of Oklahoma. And when he told me about this at the beginning of the year, I mean, this is something that he came up with, and I'll let him explain more about it. But when he was kind of telling me about all the options that you had in Oklahoma to hunt big game, it kind of made me take a step back and go, wow, you can get all those over-the-counter tags in Oklahoma. And he set out to do it with a bow. Not only do that, but capture it on camera for the show and everything.
Right.
It was awesome.
Well, let's take a little break and hear from our friends at Rackology, and then we'll get back to our conversation with the Major League Bowhunting crew, Brandon Adams and Matt Duff.
Rackology Deer Supplement and Attractant, developed through years of intense scientific research, comes a product that puts it all in one bag. Superior attractant, scientifically formulated vitamins and minerals, and all at a much better price. To get yours today, please check out Rackology.org for a list of dealers. Rackology, how can you afford not to use it? Everything deer need, all in one bag.
And now back to our conversation with Matt Duff and Brandon Adams from Major League Bowhunter.
Brandon, tell us about the Oklahoma Slam.
Well, I am from Oklahoma. I was born and raised there. And this all came about in 2014. I went bear hunting in southeastern Oklahoma, and we weren't successful. There was a lot of bears on camera, but every time I went in there, they didn't show up. And I realized that in the state of Oklahoma, we have 5 big game animals that you can hunt with over-the-counter tags with open season in 1 year. And it was in 2014 whenever I kind of made my mind up that I wanted to try to get all 5 of them. At that point, I'd only killed 2 animals, whitetail and a mule deer. But in the state, we have black bear, we have elk, and we have antelope. And like I said, every tag is available over the counter. Anyone at this table can do it next year if they want to.
So not just in-state, you're talking out of state and all that?
Yeah, anyone, non-resident, resident, whomever.
Wow.
And it took... Obviously, it took 4 years for it to come to fruition. But in the fall of 2017, I was at one of my best friend's wedding, and his father-in-law came up to me and he said, "Hey, if you ever want to come hunt elk in Oklahoma, let me know." And I'm like, "I'm letting you know right now. Let's do it." And from there, that was whenever I was like, "Hey, the elk. If I have an elk property, I can make the other ones happen." And so in January of 2018, I put it on social media, what I was doing and what I needed. And at the time, I needed a bear property and an antelope property because Major League Bowhunter is fortunate enough to have a lease in northwestern Oklahoma that has whitetail and mule deer on it. And, of course, I have whitetail access, in a lot of different places around home. I'm from central Oklahoma. So I needed those two properties. Hit up Instagram because, that's what any other 29-year-old would do, right?
Right.
And I had this is a true story. I had tens of thousands of acres with under an hour because of Instagram.
No kidding.
And then I had a contact for the bear, which led into the property that I ended up bear hunting in southeastern Oklahoma, and I ended up doing a bunch of whitetail hunting down there too. And then the elk property, I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but there was it fell through, and then that deal fell through, and then I found another guy, and then that deal fell through, and then that deal fell through, and that was panic mode because I'm in mid-July, and I've already told everyone I'm going to do this, which I wouldn't have done if I didn't have all the properties sealed up.
Right.
And I don't have an elk property, and I was very fortunate that I contacted a person who put me in contact with another person who was cousins with a friend whose they once had puppies together, and I backed into some of the best elk hunting I've ever stepped foot on in my entire life, and that was in southwestern Oklahoma.
So this was all, you set out to do this in 2018.
Right. The 2018-19 fall season.
Gotcha.
Right.
Then that lead to a full successful Oklahoma Slam.
It did. Yeah, I started off in October. The biggest thing as far as the logistics involved was lining up the actual hunts. Not just lining up the properties, but lining up the dates. Because in Oklahoma, all the deer seasons and the bear and the antelope all start on October the 1st.
Gotcha.
And the antelope only runs until the 14th. And the bear season is only good for a couple of days because once the acorns hit the ground, which most of the time they're on the ground by October 1, but once they hit the ground, they're not coming to bait stations anymore. And then the elk season started this year on October the 6th. So I had to kill the three hardest ones, a bear, an elk, and an antelope in a 2-week period.
Wow.
And so
different ends of the state.
And completely different ends of the state. Southeastern for the bear, southwest for the elk, and then the very far tip of the panhandle for the antelope. And so I killed them the first, got very lucky and killed my bear on October 1st. Hunted whitetail for a few days because I was basically treading water until elk season came in. And went over there and started hunting the 6th. Ended up killing on the 8th. We had torrential downpours the entire time. Ended up killing on the 8th. Was very lucky. Killed midday on top of a mountain, which you
were bugling those elk just like we did in New Mexico,
I said, it was as good as elk hunting I've ever been in anywhere. New Mexico, anything I've heard in Colorado. I mean, it was just, they were bugling in not so great weather, in very adverse weather, super windy. It was raining, pouring rain, elk bugling everywhere, and good elk. I mean, I killed a 300-inch bull, and we seen many bulls that were bigger. But I killed there on the 8th, and then barreled it up to the panhandle, and started hunting speed goats with a bow, and that was by far the hardest of the 5.
Okay.
Yeah, because so in Oklahoma, there's a 14-day archery season, which is from the 1st to the 14th, and I'm coming in on the back end of that. On the 10th is the day I got there, or the day I started hunting. But before that, there's about 2 weeks of rifle hunting that are draw hunts that you have to put in for a draw, and they're pretty they're lifetime tags, they're coveted tags. But so I'm basically a month into a season, into a fairly small area. I'm sure familiar with Oklahoma, but our panhandle isn't that big, as far as width.
Right.
And so there had been a lot of animals taken. The animals were very spooky, and it's post-rut. And so I have archery equipment, and it was 30 degrees, snowing and raining the whole time. So there was no water. There's no, it's not the traditional bow hunting.
Go to a water hole when it's hot and dry.
Right, you can't sit on a water hole. So we're doing spot and stock. We're trying to use a decoy, and I missed one the very first stock. I missed one. The guy I was hunting with, Zach, he said, "Hey, when you come out here, make sure you're able to shoot out there, 90, 100 yards." He goes, that's because that's a realistic shot. And I'm like, okay. And so the very first stalk that we had this buck come in with a doe, single. It was just a two goats, and they come in, and the buck gets to 94 yards, and I'm behind my decoy. I draw back and let it fly, and he's like, man, I figured you'd wait. I'm like, dude, you told me to be prepared to shoot at 100 yards. And so I shot. I missed. Right. And then we went after stalk after stalk after stalk, and then there was a lot of animals in the state, but they were spooky, the conditions weren't great, and they weren't responsive to decoys because it wasn't that time of year. And eventually we had one bedded, a really, really nice goat, especially for me. I was after anything with a black cheek, which is just
So be prepared for a 100-yard shot.
Yeah, and the one that I ended up shooting, I missed it at about 70, and then it ran out there, and I shot it at 85.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
but you have been putting a lot of practice in your backyard.
When I practice,
out there,
I stand on my back porch, and I have a range that goes up to 120 yards, and I only shoot. I mean, that's general, but I only shoot at 90 and 100 yards.
Really?
Yeah. So if I go out there and I'm gonna shoot, say, a dozen arrows at lunch, because I shoot a dozen arrows, 2 to 3 dozen arrows a session. So you don't want to get too tired. You start creating bad habits. But I'll shoot those throughout the day. And I won't shoot at 20, 30, 40. I'll shoot out there at 90 and 100.
So you'll shoot. Let's break off on that a little bit. So you'll shoot throughout the day, 3 dozen arrows, thereabouts.
I'll shoot a dozen to 2 dozen per session.
Per session,
right? And I'm fortunate that the lifestyle and my career allows me to, because I work at an office at home, that I can step on my back porch and I can shoot. Yeah. 2 dozen arrows and then go back in and work.
Okay. And how often are you taking those sessions throughout the day?
This year I was shooting a lot. I don't know. I was shooting a lot of arrows.
So 24 arrows.
I was shooting over 100 arrows a day, easy.
Take break, go shoot again, go back in, work a little bit, go back out, shoot.
Right.
You do that all day. How long did you practice for? Like the several months before?
All year round. Yeah, all year. And then there was a point, which I normally don't do this. I normally don't talk about it because I'm definitely not one of those guys. But I was putting a lot of work, like physically too. So I was running. I set my mind as I was running 20 plus miles a week. Okay. Got made fun of a lot from Mr. Matthew Clark here.
Because I was watching some of his Instagram posts of him working out.
No, there was no Instagram post.
Shirt off and all this kind of stuff.
Any Instagram post that I posted was making fun of that.
I know. Making fun of those that post that
anything
kind of
that
stuff.
goes on my Instagram is very satirical.
Yeah.
But I was putting a lot of that stuff in because I knew that there was going to be some physically demanding hunts, i.e. the antelope and the elk in particular.
Right. So forget the 10, the 20, the 30, 40-yard shots. You're going out to 70, 80, 90.
Right.
Practicing a lot.
You know how easy a 40-yard shot is whenever you're used to shooting a 100-yard shot?
Yeah.
Probably, and chip shot.
When it comes to shooting animals, and I told Zach this when we started, I didn't want to shoot at 90 and 100 yards, right? Because there's a lot of things that can happen in that distance. But these goats, first of all, you're not going to get another chance. You can't get a 40-yard shot. But they just don't move like whitetails. They're not quite like whitetails. And so as long as you pick a spot, right there in that behind the shoulder.
And you can make that shot.
And you can make the shot, it's going to go there.
Do you have a particular site or something that you're using to get you out to that 90 routinely?
Yeah, I actually use the same site that Duff uses, HHA. It's a Kingpin Optimizer. It's a tournament edition, so it has a big, long dovetail on it.
Like that same one I shoot.
Yeah, it's the exact same site. And whenever you get that sight further away from your riser, it gets further away from your eye. And whenever that distance gets further, you get more accurate.
Okay.
And so it really helps out.
Is it a multiple pin system?
No, it's a single pin. It's a single pin. So it has the HHA. They have like a wheel on it.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you set 2 different yardages, and then you go and find the corresponding tape, and then you'll have 0 to 100 on your yardage markers.
It's mathematically figured out for you. So if it's ranged at 71, you can dial it to 71. And that pin, if you can hold it there and put it there, that's where that arrow goes.
Yep.
It's
math.
Raises my next question. How do you hold a pin at a 70-yard target?
You hold the pin at 70 yards the exact same way you hold a pin at 20 yards.
Okay.
And it's super. Okay, so it's all this is math. Archery is math. And so if you have a 2-inch group at 20 yards, you should have a a 10-inch group at 100 yards.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's just math.
Yeah.
It's just angles.
Right.
And so it's absolutely no different. Nothing should change whatsoever whenever you're aiming at 70, aiming at 20, aiming at 100, wherever.
The 10 inches is a big gap when you're getting out that far.
Right.
So when do you know to release at that point?
Well, I mean, I'm talking about like a group. Okay, so here's the thing. So I've struggled. Duff has mentioned target panic a while ago. I've struggled with target panic throughout my life as well. You don't ever want to make the shot go where you want it to. You want to just squeeze, and you want the shot to just happen. Right? So all you worry about is aiming.
Yeah.
And if you aim on that dot or you aim on that the vitals, you just let the trigger do its thing. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like if you put too much thought about where your pin is, you're in trouble. Yeah. Like serious trouble.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you almost clear your mind. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
In a sense.
You can overthink it.
Oh, it's so easy to overthink. All you need to be doing is focusing on just aiming, and then let the rest of it happen. And if you have that mindset,
send it.
Well, if you have that mindset, good things are going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Just send it.
Just send it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. So, what was your most memorable? What one strikes you as that was probably the best hunt that I'll experience in doing this Oklahoma Slam?
Oh, that's a good question, because I'm not kidding. Every single one of them has like their own thing.
Right.
So
but
like
there's got to be that one elite one though.
No, I don't know. It's hard.
I've seen the footage, and I mean, to me, they were all great. But seeing that elk, to me, in Oklahoma, bugling and coming into the call just like they do in Colorado or New Mexico, and then the size of the bull was pretty cool to me. Saying that's Oklahoma, it's just not something.
That's true. On a traditional like perspective, the elk by far, because we killed it at midday. We struggled. We was climbing these mountains, and southwestern Oklahoma has got pretty decent peaks from the bottom to the top, and it's the roughest terrain I've ever been in as far as rocks and climbing, and it just sucks. But we got this bull in our lap. I was at full draw. Had this thing standing facing straight at me in the wide open at about 20 yards, 15 yards maybe, and he stood there. I was a full draw for a minute and 45 seconds. Okay. And I wanted to let down. So many times. I wanted to shoot him right in the throat, straight on. And I knew that wasn't the thing I should do. And he let out a bugle. At 15, 20 yards in my face while I'm at full draw.
Yeah,
that sent shivers. It sends shivers down my spine right now thinking about it. But saying that, the black bear, and people don't. So I killed in the first 20 minutes, right? Not even 20 minutes. There was a black bear. We got in an hour before.
I think we got Brandon thinking here.
Yeah, you got me thinking. The black bear is much more than that moment of just pulling the trigger. Right? Because I went down to that property 7 times, 6, 7, 8 times, putting bait out, because we had to bait these things, and it's only 2 hours from my house. And all of that work and that, the financial, commitment to that, and then to actually have that, we actually situated the blind to where we could sneak into it in case something was on the bait station, because these bears are there 24 hours a day, and for us to actually sneak in, we open the back of this blind, we get in, we shut the blind, we look out the window, and there's a black blob moving the barrel right in front of us. We're like, holy cow, it worked. And then for us to wait there for over an hour for it to get daylight, and then see that it's one of the shooters, we see that it's one we wanted to shoot, and then we shoot and he dies right in front of us. I mean, that was extremely rewarding. Mm-hmm. And then the antelope, I ain't kidding, I killed on the second day. I got lucky. I killed on the second day, but that was the toughest hunt. If I didn't kill on the second day, I probably wouldn't have killed. That's how tough the hunt was. And then the mule deer. We ain't talked about the mule deer. Right. I fell into which I knew there's mule deer in that part of the country, because the lease that Major League Bowhunter has now is across the road from the lease that the Wallahatchie, which Chipper owned. And I've killed multiple mule deer there. But this was the first year I ever really said, I'm going to kill a mule deer.
Right. And it's kind of your spot for the mule.
That was my mule deer spot, right. Yeah. And so I put out cameras. I did a lot of scouting. And you guys would not believe the quality of mule deer that I ran into. I mean, it was the best.
We didn't know that. We didn't know it was that extensive. I mean, because we were whitetail hunted it, on the river, and he's up in the hills, and he's like, you wouldn't believe the mule deer up there. And we'd see them sporadically come out into some crop fields up north, but never really paid much attention to them. And he got into not only a lot of mule deer, but a lot of mature mule deer. In fact, there was one that was 200 inches or better. Neighbor ended up shooting with a rifle opening day, but it was really cool to see all that. I couldn't believe it was really on our place, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the mule deer, as far as the hunt, it was probably the funnest hunt out of everything. As far as seeing them animals and having encounters, because I killed them the fourth day, and we had encounters every single day, every single hunt. It was just bang, bang, bang. And then the whitetail is special because I wanted it so bad. And
to finish out?
To finish out. I'm not saying I took for granted the whitetail, because I know how hard it is to kill a mature whitetail. I mean, I'm not dumb. But I did think that I would kill a whitetail. And I killed the mule deer on November the 4th. So that was the fourth animal, and I was super early in the season. I was like, well, I got over 2 months to do the whitetail. So I waited until after Thanksgiving before I started up, and it was just a struggle. And I seen young deer and had some really nice encounters with young deer, but I just couldn't see the bucks that I was wanting to see. And then it came down to New Year's Day, actually New Year's Eve. It had a big front rolling in, and we had an encounter with one of the deer. We went back up to northwest Oklahoma on the Major League Bowhunter lease and had an encounter with a deer that we want to see. And then the next day he came by and was walking by the stand. And, I mean, it was just – that was special too. I mean, every single one of these animals this year has been incredibly special.
I told him, I said, when do you go into panic mode? Because once he got the muley – he came up and actually he came to my farm in Mississippi, filmed me shooting a buck, and I was like, when are you going to get after the whitetails? And he said, I got some time. He said, now if it gets to Christmas and I haven't killed a whitetail, I'll probably go into a little panic mode. So
so I had like 4 or 5 days of panic.
But no, that's cool. Congratulations on that. That's awesome. A huge accomplishment.
Thank you.
So you got it all done. The 4 done fairly early, then you had the whitetail was left.
I killed the first 3 in the first 11 days of the season, and then I chilled out at home, hanging out with family and stuff, and then killed the mule deer on the 4th day of that hunt, and then chilled out for a month, and then kind of struggled for a month, and then
came up and filmed.
I was doing a lot of filming. I filmed you in Kansas. I filmed you in Mississippi. I was doing different stuff like that.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So how many years consecutively can you do this, you think?
Exactly 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. That elk property was, I owe a lot of thanks to Trevor Johnson for hooking me up with the landowner, and that deal's not going to happen again. Not anytime soon, because I fell into a heck of a deal there. So in southwest Oklahoma, there's a big refuge called the Wichita National Wildlife Refuge, and it's like the creme de la creme. There's elk everywhere on it. It's like the most coveted tag when it comes to draw hunts in Oklahoma. It's a lifelong tag, but from my understanding, they have a 100% success rate.
No kidding.
Yeah. They draw 250 tags a year, and everyone that goes down there kills,
a big bull,
bull, or a bull. And the property that I was hunting on was a half a mile from that fence. So
gotcha. So they're pushing out your way where you
absolutely. Yeah, and that refuge is 50. I think it's 50,000 acres of it's high fence, but that high fence is a loose term because there's holes everywhere, and there wouldn't be elk on the outside of the fence if that fence was keeping them in.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Congratulations on that, Brandon.
Thank you.
It is awesome.
Very good. So what's the future for what's going on with Heartland Bowhunter?
Major League.
I don't know. Let's call Mike.
We'll call Mikey Hunsucker.
Wow.
Sean.
Who knows what they're doing?
We'll ask him. I see some of their posts from time to time. We'll call Mikey and Sean, talk to them.
We'll edit that out.
Well, we, Chipper has had, a big year last year with getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, and that was really a cool experience. We got to go up there and be a part of that, and got a couple of newborn babies the last couple of years, and so he's got a lot going on. He was able to hunt quite a bit this year in the fall. But for, kind of moving forward, we're looking at doing some more stuff digitally, adding some different content that's a little bit outside the box of the normal show format, to give people a little bit more sense of what we do throughout the year. So Brandon and I love turkey hunting, spring turkey hunting, and we turkey hunt with shotguns. I mean, I don't bow hunt for turkeys. I mean, I love spring turkey hunting, and we filmed a lot of that. We've never really shown much of it. It's here and there on some of our posts and things social media wise, but we want to showcase that a little bit of what we do when we're not just in the woods bow hunting. And then I absolutely love upland bird hunting, and I have a German Shorthair pointer that's 3 years old now, and I've been going up and helping Triple Creek Outfitters the last couple of years guide bird hunters. And with your own dog seeing, especially a GSP in the field doing its thing, it's hard to describe. I mean, I grew up duck hunting in the Mississippi Delta and had a lab, and part of the reason I love duck hunting so much was the dog aspect, working the dog and all that. But in duck hunting, the hunter's doing all the work. You're putting the decoys out, picking the spot. Birds come in, you shoot them, then the retriever goes and gets the bird. Where in upland hunting, that pointer, your whole hunt's based on how good those dogs work, and watching them find those. And these are all wild birds in central Kansas, and we got a place in Nebraska and Oklahoma where he killed in Oklahoma is awesome quail hunting. Wild birds. I mean, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. And so we love doing that. And a lot of the guys that book deer hunts with Richard in the fall come up and bird hunt. And I've gotten to know those guys by helping guide deer hunters and, develop friendships with them. And I enjoy going up this time of year and helping guide bird hunters. And Richard actually has expanded his operation and gotten 2 new lodges. And so Chipper and I have both committed, as well as Brandon, to being in camp some with some of the paid clients. And so like this year, Brandon came up. I basically guided from October 1st to Thanksgiving. So every week I had 2 guys I guided, and those guys didn't know I was going to be guiding them bow hunting, but I helped set up the farms. They came into camp, and I was just one of the guides. And a lot of those guys were fans of the show. They're big bow hunters, and so a lot of the questions that we get on social media and stuff, it's cool to be sitting around the campfire at night or at the lodge, and they're like, well, why are you shooting that bow, or why are you shooting this, or how do you set up your farm in Mississippi, or what do you look for? And just being able to talk shop with those guys goes a long way for Richard's outfitting business. And it was a cool experience too for those guys to go hunting. Brandon came with me, and I had 2 guys from Ohio, from Canton, Ohio.
No kidding.
Paul Schumacher's a big home builder in Ohio.
I think I recognize Schumacher Homes.
Yeah, Schumacher Homes.
Yep.
So he's one of my clients, and his financial guy, Steve, who was a kind of a newer bow hunter. Brandon went with us, and we got to put them out, and Brandon was filming a lot of it, and they both killed, and he was there with the Major League Bowhunter camera to do the recovery, and we got them on camera. And at first they were kind of, I don't know if we can be on camera, but we were I was like, be yourself. And we captured a lot of that, and he put together, some cool stuff for the outfitter. But that was a cool experience, and, we want to showcase some of that too. So the digital platform will give us that opportunity a little bit, where it may not fit quite into the show format. So that's some of the stuff we got coming down the pipe.
You guys could have like Major League Longbeards.
Yeah, exactly. We killed, I saw 21 longbeards die last year, guiding, and then Brandon and I killed 6 or 8 together.
We killed a bunch,
We had a lot of fun just as a group turkey hunting last year.
Really? I like decoying them in and shooting them point blank, They're awesome.
We do too.
Yeah. So it's like spot and stalk turkey hunting.
Yeah, it's a blast.
And going back to bringing a kid out, we had just as much fun bringing some first-time adult hunters out turkey hunting. It was a mind-blowing experience, and some of them are good friends of ours, but also have some disabilities. They can't get out as much, and we made that happen.
We did 4 longbeards in 4 days, 4 mornings.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Got to be done by noon in New Hampshire.
2 guys that never got one. Yep. One guy hadn't got one in 10 years.
Right.
And just...
That was with Paul's buddy Steve. Had never killed a buck, with his bow.
Right.
And, it was to be able to go, he shot him, and he thought he made a good shot. And, we were there to blood trail it and get up on it. And here's a guy, my age. And to see him get his first deer with a bow was just really cool. And, I got as much enjoyment out of that, than because I had several of the clients, I had actually set up farms. And this one guy in particular from Indiana, he was coming to Triple Creek Outfitters because he wanted to kill a Boone and Crockett buck. He's from Indiana, which has some big deer there, and he had hunted in Illinois and different places, but never had killed a legitimate booner. And he was booking with Richard Blakesley, my buddy, because he knows the caliber of deer and his setup or whatnot. And so I got to go develop this new farm along the Arkansas River, hung the stand, and actually had a friend of his with me who was another paid client. I said, I want to go set up this farm, and we put this ladder up and a pinch point or whatever, and this guy ended up getting in the stand. He shoots a mid-80s buck, and that was, he was a veteran bow hunter but had never gotten that, kind of that bucket list buck, and to be a part of that on the recovery was like I killed it. And I could have gone and hunted that farm. In fact, Richard's like, hey, you can take that river farm. We're probably not going to hunt it. Go set it up. But once we got up there, I was like, man, this is a good area. We need to put a client in here. I can kill a deer later on in the year, you know. And so even though I could have gone and sat in that ladder and gotten that buck, I got more out of Chris getting that buck than me, And it would have been the biggest deer by far I'd ever killed. But it was one of Richard's clients. I'd rather, use my experience and knowledge to try to get some guys on deer and get as much reward out of that, just like I do on the family farm, where I've got, 7 or 8 setups that I know Brady or my dad, who's 72, they can go sit in the ground blind. They're going to see deer and got a really good chance to get something. And that means more to me than, me getting a buck. It was just almost a bonus. Killing that booner this year was just, a bonus. In fact, my dad, I wanted to get him on that buck once, Chipper had left and we didn't get on him. It's bad weather, warm. He left, couldn't come back. Well, I really wanted my dad to try to hunt that deer, but he said, I've never shot a deer, killed a deer with my bow and arrow. He goes, I don't want to shoot at that caliber of a deer. You've worked too hard on this farm. You need to go hunting. So he, was sitting in the blind with me, those couple of days, and it was something I'll never forget.
Yeah, that's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely.
It used to be, I want to go hunting for myself.
Right.
But I'd rather go hunting for somebody else now.
That's right.
It's phenomenal.
And that's what we all need to do. Like Dad was saying, if every, accomplished hunter that's been doing it and knows this stuff will take one kid or adult, like you said, that's never been, and put them in a good situation and a good experience, we all know what that feeling is that you can't buy. There's nothing you can do to recreate that feeling or whatever. And everybody I've ever taken that's gotten their first turkey or their deer, they get it then. Mm-hmm. And then that becomes not only a passionate hunter for life, but in our industry, we're all talking about, advertising dollars and making a living. We're in this business and it's shrinking by the day because kids have other things, and our country is changing, and things that once were, looked at as no big deal, it's just a way of life, now might be criticized or whatever. The more people we can get out there and experience that is just going to help the industry, because the more people that are out there buying equipment, now the manufacturers' sales are going up, and we feel that from an entertainment standpoint, we're trying to put things out there that make people watch our product and go, I want to go do that, And so the way our business works, we're funded by basically the manufacturers, and when it's a shrinking business and the dollars are getting less and less, it's hard to fund what we do. And same thing, I was listening to NASCAR on the way up here and, talking about teams that are shutting down because advertising dollars are not there or whatever. And, it's part of a growing pains I think we're going through, but I think it's a new normal in our industry. We have to accept kids have more stuff at their fingertips that can keep their attention. Right. Where we all growing up, maybe with the exception of Brandon here, you stayed outside till Mom called you in for supper. You made bow and arrows with, willow limbs or whatever. You're just out doing that kind of stuff.
I'm not far from you, Brandon, just so you know.
But, so that is getting less and less. And so getting people, and even my little brother will admit, between Brady's competitive baseball starting as a 6-year-old, he wants to have him in that opportunity, because if you're not playing competitive ball, you're behind the 8 ball now once you get to be 10, 12, whatever. So he wanted to, him to have that experience, but I think there's a fine line, and I look at hunting as something that can teach a kid as much about, teammates, camaraderie, discipline, responsibility than, playing a competitive sport or a team sport. But unless you're mentored into it and somebody will take a kid or, a lot of kids that don't have a dad or an uncle or somebody that'll take them, how are they ever going to become a hunter? There's nothing out there that's marketing to that single mom to go, here's a program that can take your kid in the outdoors. Right. I mean, there might be a couple of things like Fathers in the Field.
Sports accepts that, but there's other things to life. Hunting
and we all talk about it in this industry about trying to grow, our business and get more hunters and stuff. But Dad really simplified when he said, if every single guy in this, in this building that hunts and makes TV or whatever took the time to get one new hunter, whether it was an adult or especially a kid, out there and get them their first turkey or deer, if we did that every year with one new guy or person, that would grow the business. It'd grow our sport if we all did that.
Absolutely. Yep. No doubt about it. Well, guys, hey, it's been
fun.
Great.
It,
yeah,
thanks for coming back on.
Thank y'all.
It's been a blast, Brandon.
Thanks for your first appearance, and keep the glue together over there at Major League.
It's like wrangling cats.
I'm sure.
In a rainstorm, yeah.
Hey, where can we, if we wanted some more information about Major League Bowhunter, where can we find you guys at?
You can go to our social media website, our social media sites, but MajorLeagueBowhunter.com has all those listed links you can click on to Instagram and Facebook, and Brandon does a great job with his personal Instagram account. We all have individual accounts. Chipper is more on Twitter, which kind of the sports world is that way anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of their medium, and I just kind of bounce back and forth between, Facebook and a lot of people from home still are kind of Facebook, and my parents' friends, see stuff, and they, my dad's friends that kept up with me in baseball, they still keep up with me on Facebook. And it's funny because I just posted those Mississippi deer on Facebook with a thing about, being on the family farm and everything. And I got calls from people, that have my number, that hadn't seen my Twitter or Instagram, and so I think you have to dabble with all of them. So, but you can go to the website, MajorLeagueBowhunter.com, and get all that. And then we got the YouTube channel that we've got, a lot of content on as well.
Absolutely. Nice. All right, guys, we really do appreciate you taking time out of your day here at the 2019 ATA and sitting down with us and ripping a good podcast. We've enjoyed it and we've had fun.
Yeah.
It's been a blast, man. Let's do it more often.
Thank you. It's been great.
It's always fun to talk to the guys at Major League Bowhunter. They are deep thinkers. They're great hunters. They have a great television program. They have a great internet series. And I like what they're doing for the industry. They're good liaisons. They're good representatives. And they do it right. When I get calls from some of my deer hunting friends and they tell me that Major League Bowhunter is their favorite, then I know they're doing something right. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.